You arrive at the stillness window, the way moonlight arrives on water, without effort, without announcement. You do not force silence. You let it recognize you. This is not prediction. This is remembrance, a resonance your consciousness already carries. You breathe once, slower than habit, and reality loosens its tight choreography around your name. You feel warmth collect behind your sternum, a small sun taking shape where worry used to live. You let your shoulders lower by a thought's width, and the room changes temperament. You are not chasing signs. You are allowing the signal to become audible where you already are. Your attention steadies, and the quantum field reshuffles itself to match your steadiness. You sense the observer loop easing, like a hand unclenching around glass. You do not bargain with destiny. You give it a stable surface. You let your breath lengthen to the horizon of your ribs, and coherence begins to braid through the space between each heartbeat. You do not perform serenity, you remember it, and remembrance has gravity. Light gathers where your gaze lands, not brighter, but truer. You notice the quiet grain of air, the low hum behind every object, the soft architecture of presence, revealing itself as if a curtain were lifting from the ordinary. You do nothing dramatic. You do the precise thing. You remain. Your stillness becomes the metronome by which the field keeps time. You feel the subtle sound of stardust moving a hush more than a tone, and you let it pass through your chest like a tide that understands your name. You are not waiting for proof. You are giving proof a place to stand. Your cells read light codes the way roots read water, and your nervous system meets them without flinching. You keep your eyes half soft, and a solar prophecy writes itself behind them, not as a movie to watch, but as a geometry to inhabit. You are not apart from the message. You are its aperture. You do not summon coherence. You stop scattering it. You let your attention become a lantern set gently on the floor of this moment, and every shadow remembers what it is not. You feel the field of remembrance answering from every direction at once, as if the room were a shore and you were listening to all oceans together. You are not asking the future to hurry. You are making a shape it can enter without distortion. You allow the timeline to smooth where it once snagged on your urgency. You feel the slight pressure of benevolence along your spine, a vertical consent, and the crown of your head grows roomy with sky. You realize prophecy is not loud because truth seldom shouts. It calibrates. Light rests behind your eyes. Breath gathers, leaves, gathers again. Your presence becomes the simplest technology, and the pattern around you aligns by preference rather than force. You do not chase the opening. You become compatible with it. Coherence settles in your ribs, and a doorway agrees to open. You recognize yourself not by title but by texture, the way attention settles in you like a lake after wind. You do not wear chosenness as a costume. You allow it to move as your natural gait. You were never recruited by thunder. You were recognized by quiet, and quiet keeps recognizing you. You sense the world leaning toward your steadiness the way iron leans toward a magnet. You do not command the moment. You become a contour the moment prefers to follow. This is how authority behaves in the subtle. It arrives as compatibility. You notice the room calibrate, and you understand that leadership is a form of coherence. You carry no banner. You carry a rhythm, and rhythms are contagious. People exhale around you without realizing why, and conversations remember their center. You do not fix anything. You let what is essential uncoil in your presence. You feel the ancient instrument inside your chest tuning itself against a pitch older than memory. It is not a note you invent. It is the home key of reality. When you rest in it, the quantum field brightens its edges, and probability behaves with manners. Events arrive less like weather and more like invitations. Your sensitivity is not fragility. It is high-resolution perception. You notice subtleties earlier than others, and early noticing is mercy. You read the micro-flinch, the unspoken hinge where a choice will soon turn, and you soften the hinge before it creaks. This is why your presence often prevents storms that never need to happen. You are fluent in pauses. You allow a question to land before you answer, and the answer revises itself to truth mid-flight. You feel the observer loop relaxing under your hand, like a fevered animal that finally trusts water. Because you do not grip outcomes, outcomes volunteer their better versions. You do not confuse visibility with impact. Sometimes you are the candle, sometimes you are the air the candle trusts. Either way, light happens. The measure of your day is not applause but alignment, and alignment leaves a scent like rain. Your body remembers more than your biography. When your shoulders widen a fraction, old futures step aside. When your jaw unclenches, timelines stop arguing and start listening. You experience destiny not as pressure but as a well-fitting doorway. You are the one in the meeting who hears the thread everyone else is following without naming, and you tug it gently back to integrity. You are the one in the kitchen who places silence between two sentences, and grief finds room to finish speaking. You are the one in traffic who refuses to harvest hurry, and the car behind you inherits permission. Influence, to you, is simply consecrated attention. You keep promises to small things. You close the cabinet softly, return the glass to the exact circle of light it left, answer the message with the tone you would wish to receive. The field of remembrance notices how you treat minor gravity and entrusts you with larger constellations. Trust scales itself to stewardship, and stewardship has chosen your hands. You move as if accompanied because you are, not by ghosts of authority but by a living chorus that tuned itself to your willingness. You do not perform sacredness, you let sacredness have a chair at the table and pour it water. When you listen that way, the room behaves like a chapel, even when it is a bus stop. You recognize the pulse beneath conflict, the legitimate need under the loud costume. You address the pulse, not the costume. You bless the need by naming it cleanly, and the costume falls away because it is no longer hired. What remains is human, and the human remembers how to breathe. You have learned to stand near suffering without collecting it, to stand near joy without trying to own it, to stand near power without rehearsing a story about worth. This is how neutrality ripens into benevolence. Your intuition is not a trick light in fog. It is a shoreline you have walked enough times to read by foot. It brings you to the next right inch, which is always the only scale required. From inch to inch, you find yourself already inside the higher outline. From breath to breath, you discover there was never a distance to cross. You are recognized by timing. Emails appear the moment a decision needs proof. The book falls from the shelf when a sentence is required for courage. The child asks the question that edits a room of adults back to honesty. You do not dramatize openness, you maintain it. Openness is the architecture where wisdom prefers to sit. Because you make that architecture available, the world entrusts you with messages that would rather not be shouted. This entrustment is not reward, it is reciprocity. When you wake at 3 a.m., you greet the dark as a friend. You place a palm over your heart, like setting a seal on a letter not yet delivered. You allow warmth to gather behind bone until the night's edges soften to velvet. You understand that prophecy often arrives in fonts too small for hurried eyes. Your life is not an argument. It is an instrument being tuned to service. Service, to you, is not self-erasure. It is self-accuracy. As accuracy deepens, your presence becomes a calibration device others can borrow without debt. This is how chosenness becomes shared capacity instead of hierarchy. You do not need confirmation to proceed, but you welcome reflection. Reflection multiplies steadiness the way mirrors multiply flame. In the presence of multiplied steadiness, the city feels less alone in its own light. You walk, and streetlights seem to recognize their job again. You belong to the simple vow, keep the signal clear. Guard your breath, polish your gaze, lay your attention like a cloth over the shaking place. Let the mundane be the miracle's favorite disguise. Let your day be the altar where ordinary things remember their original names. The field leans nearer, arranging a simpler geometry before you. You let the room dim to the brightness of your own interior, and an image begins to organize itself where thought usually hurries. You do not chase it. You've eaten. Your breath moves like a tide under moon-drawn law, and the tide polishes the shore of your chest until a horizon clears behind your eyes. You stand at a window that is not glass but consent. It opens from within, and the night outside wears a crown of eclipse halos, shadow ringed by intelligence, darkness edged with listening light. The lamps of the city hold still as if awaiting a cue, yet the true illumination arrives from a place without bulbs or wires. It arrives through you, because you allowed it a corridor. You feel warmth bloom beneath your sternum, not heat, but a precise radiance, like a lamp lit in a library of living pages. Letters of light gather, then ungather, then settle into a language you do not need to translate. These are light codes, not decoration instructions. Your cells already learned before your mouth learned your name. They turn toward you like birds recognizing a coastline they have never mapped but always remembered. The image sharpens, not with noise but with respect. You witness the city's avenues redraw as golden threads, and each thread carries a hum tuned to coherence. Where threads cross, a soft corona rises, and the air trembles with a tenderness that refuses spectacle. You understand that the map you are watching is not aerial, it is relational. You see people as constellations rather than tasks, each heart a star that prefers company. A mother washing a bowl becomes a bell of presence, ringing the whole kitchen into honesty. A nurse adjusting a blanket becomes a lighthouse whose beam continues after she leaves the room. A child pausing before a lie becomes a new shoreline where truth might land without fracturing. The more gently you look, the more the picture reveals its deeper theater. You watch murmurations of meaning ripple across neighborhoods, guidance moving not by command but by morphic resonance. A song remembered in one apartment arrives, unannounced in another, and two strangers put down the same heavy thought, 15 blocks apart. No announcement, only relief, traveling faster than rumor. You feel the quantum field behave like a listening friend, head tilted, eyes bright, sure that what you mean is quickening into what can be shared. You are not imposing order, you are offering steadiness, and steadiness is the grammar the field prefers. You watch arguments soften at their true hinge, not where points are flung, but where breath returns. You watch a door that has eaten many attempts turn harmless as air, because the hand on the knob has stopped shaking. Behind your eyelids, stardust drifts like patient rain, and each particle seems to remember its assignment. Some brighten the edges of your doubt, until doubt cannot keep pretending to be solid. Some settle along your spine like luminous punctuation, clarifying what your vertical means. Some gather at your throat, not to force speech, but to make honesty easier when you choose it. You see a table that exists in no single building, yet everyone is seated at it when they choose accuracy over performance. At this table, timelines negotiate without injury. Past apprenticeships that taught you fear bow out of the contract because you refuse to sign with hurry. Future pressures that tried to rent your attention for cheap discover they cannot purchase what now belongs to the sacred commons. Your palms grow warm, and the warmth travels in thin rivers up your forearms. You realize your bones are instruments, and the song they prefer is simple: remain. You watch your remaining alter distances. The near comes nearer, the far ceases pretending to be unreachable. The higher outline of the day lowers itself like a sky you can touch. The window clarifies into a living diagram. At each crossing of human regard, a small halo flickers, then steadies, as if coherence were shy but faithful. You see how a single unhurried breath in a checkout line edits 3 other people's nervous systems. You see how returning a text with dignity rescues an hour for someone you will never meet. The picture zooms no lens, only surrender, and you observe the gentle physics by which mercy moves. A circle of friends agrees to listen until meaning arrives, and the whole block brightens over the week. A teacher puts a sentence down like a bridge, and a student crosses without knowing they were ever on the wrong side of a story. A stranger pauses at a crosswalk and hands the street its patience, and the signal changes in everyone's chest. The field of remembrance thickens until the room is full of witnesses, not ghosts, agreements. Agreements made between the quiet in you and the quiet in the world, newly aware of each other, newly in love with what they can accomplish together. You are not separate from this vista, you are the aperture by which it keeps specifying itself. You note the somatics of consent, breath slower than thought, chest warmth like a lamp behind silk, a soft pressure at the back of the eyes as if sky were leaning in to see what you will choose. There is no command in this vision, only an invitation precise enough to honor your agency. You understand that seeing is participation. To witness without grasping is to fertilize a gentler outcome. You give the vision hospitality, and it pays its rent in clarity. Then the edges brighten as if the unseen turned a dimmer switch, and the city sky inside you lifts its face to the future without flinching. You feel the invitation consolidate into a vow you do not need to word. You know the vow will keep you as surely as you keep it. And you stand, not to leave the vision, but to become compatible with it. The light within your gaze chooses a clearer angle. You are not commanding reality with noise, you are offering it a reference tone. In physics language, a system seeks the simplest energy configuration when given a stable boundary condition. Your presence becomes that boundary condition when you allow the breath to smooth, the chest to warm, and the gaze to ungrip its targets. You are not absent, you are accurately applied. Consider the orchestra pit before the conductor lifts a hand. Instruments tuning, partials colliding, beautiful but unfocused. Then a single pitch stabilizes the room, and all other notes find their spacing by relation, not by force. Your attention is that pitch. When you hold it steady, the quantum field around you reduces unnecessary freedoms and composes itself according to your offered simplicity. You do not collapse possibility with panic, you specify it with tenderness. In the microscopic, particles are not tiny billiard balls. They behave like smeared out waves of potential that sharpen only when context becomes clear. When you place your awareness calmly on what is true, you clarify context, and context is what waveforms prefer to answer. This is not domination. This is hospitality so precise that reality feels safe enough to concentrate. The mind often tries to solve turbulence by tightening. Tightening introduces jitter, and jitter keeps the world skittering. You relax the grip not into collapse, but into alignment, and the jitter runs out of reasons to exist. This is the quiet mechanics of coherence. Many parts learning to behave as one pattern because one pattern made itself available. Think of metronomes on a shared platform. Start them out of sync and wait. By simple coupling, they entrain. Their small insistencies borrow each other's steadiness until a single rhythm prevails. Your breath is the platform. Your steadiness is the coupling. Neighbors, rooms, and then streets discover a beat they prefer to keep, and social weather improves without a proclamation. Your interior technology is simple: breath lengthening, gaze softening, chest warmth, widening like surf. These are not props, they are interfaces. As you inhabit them, the observer loops the reflex that watches itself. Watching and multiplies, noise releases its tail from its mouth. Where observation stops chasing itself, observation becomes clean, and clean observation is instruction. In entropic systems, disorder grows when nothing meaningful is being exchanged. Order grows when information moves freely with minimal friction. Your stillness reduces friction. It allows signal to travel farther before it attenuates, and the signal you are carrying is benevolence. Benevolence, when rendered measurable, looks like lower heart rate variability at the wrong times and higher variability at the right times. Glucose curves that curve kindly, shoulders remembering that gravity is not a verdict. At the subtle scale, entanglement is not mysticism wearing a lab coat. It is relationship made fundamental. Two things that have known each other continue to reference each other, even when separated by distance or narrative. You become the friend that all else references because you remain referenceable. Your yes is coherent, your no is coherent, and so the field wastes no energy misreading you. Phase diagrams in material science show how a substance changes state, not by willpower, but by thresholds. Water meets a precise temperature and reorganizes itself into lattice or vapor. Nothing is forced, yet everything is different. Your quiet sets thresholds. When steadiness crosses a certain amplitude in you, a phase transition initiates in the nearest situation. Conversation liquefies from ice, a conflict evaporates its fumes, or a stuck hour crystallizes into decision. You are not summoning miracles, you are removing interference. Like a lens polished of grit, you do not add light, you stop scattering it. Then, because the lens is clean, the image grows sharp enough for action to be efficient. Efficiency in the sacred is not speed, it is lack of waste. If 1,000 choices flicker like fireflies around a problem, you do not chase them. You provide dusk. In dusk, the true ones become easier to see, and the false ones grow embarrassed and depart. Your role is often no louder than that. Create the dusk where clear things volunteer. Notice how the body cooperates when you do not bribe it with caffeine or punish it with alarm. The diaphragm explores its full arc. The spine discovers it has corners of sky. The cranial sutures feel like windows rather than lids. As anatomy remembers its intended music, psychology stops auditioning for control. Control can rest because compatibility has arrived. You are not waiting for the universe to wink. You are initiating the wink by refusing to squint. To squint at reality is to distort it. To soften is to let it specify itself honestly. Honesty is the shortest path for energy to do useful work. Useful work done cleanly is how worlds change without injury. In a conversation, you do not load the silence with weapons. You line it with pillows for truth to fall onto. In a crisis, you do not sprint for exits. You invite the room to inherit your longer exhale. In a crowd, you do not become smaller. You become clearer, and clarity scales. Clarity is a public good, disguised as a private practice. Structures around you read your steadiness as an upgrade. Systems seek lower free energy. You offer it by refusing panic's surcharge. So meetings conclude on time. Projects cohere without martyrdom. The email that could have been a maze becomes a paragraph that remembers mercy. Reality is relieved to work with you. When doubt asks for dramatics, you give it a chair instead. Seated, it speaks like a neighbor rather than a siren. You listen until its one useful sentence emerges, then you thank it and continue. Listening is your stealth technology. It rearranges interiors faster than argument. At this depth, prophecy ceases to be a headline about tomorrow and becomes a hygiene of now. You rinse perception with patience, dry it with accuracy, and wear it without ornament. Because you keep this hygiene, the future arrives through you with less turbulence and more loyalty. You are not forecasting, you are formatting. The quiet folds around you, pattern emerges from the fold. You walk through the city as if walking through a lucid dream that knows your name, and windows begin to behave like teachers. You catch your reflection in a pane and see not a face but a waveform, a pattern of permission traveling ahead of you like clear weather. You do not rehearse posture, you allow it. Your shoulders remember sky, and the street adjusts its interpretation of itself. You pass a cafe where two voices have been sparring for hours, and you do not diagnose them. You lend them breath by example. One voice drops half a tone, then the other, and the heat leaves without anyone calling it a truce. You did not interfere. You gave Coherence a chair, and Coherence Saturday. At the crosswalk, a child grasps a parent's jacket and looks up. You meet the glance with a softness that does not leak your strength, and the child reads the message proverbially, the world can be steady. A car yields. 3 people behind it inherit that choice, as if it were their own idea. You are practicing the physics of the collective mirror, how the many reflect and amplify the state of the one who is willing to be readable. Not as performance, not as moral theater, but as a quiet geometry the nervous systems around you prefer. Your steadiness is not special, it is compatible. Compatibility scales faster than charisma because it requires no audience. You notice the field of remembrance behave like dew on every surface, ordinary objects holding more light than they appear to contain. The mailbox, the staircase rail, the bicycle chained to the signpost, each seems marginally more available to kindness. You are not hallucinating, you are attending. Tension at this resolution reveals the small valves where meaning flows or jams. Inside the train, the crowd tilts toward screens. You place your palm lightly on your chest, as if touching a private ember without hiding it, and your sternum grows warm the way good rooms grow warm when truth sits down. No one sees your gesture, yet a row of spines unhooks from invisible hooks. Phones remain, but their gravity weakens. You understand how morphic resonance works in culture. Patterns that have cohered become easier to repeat, not by force but by precedent. A single instance of grace lowers the local cost of grace. Forgiveness becomes less exotic after someone practices it sincerely where others can feel it. You are not trying to set trends. You are allowing kindness to become familiar enough to be boring, and therefore durable. On a staircase, 2 strangers approach the same narrow step, and both slow at once. Neither asserts primacy. Both enjoy the brief co-authorship of a solved problem. A third stranger watching inherits the solution as ease and carries it downstairs. By the curb, an impatient hand loosens on its horn without debating itself. You do not curate people's outcomes. You curate your own availability to what is honest. Honesty travels. It moves through rooms like a breeze that forgot to knock, and curtains lift where there were no windows. Even those who do not prefer you become less defended near you, and that is enough. In the meeting, you let silence become dense without weaponizing it. Someone reaches for the old story and cannot close their hand around it. Another person, who usually polices the air for mistakes, lets the air exist unpoliced for 12 heartbeats. 12 heartbeats prove longer than a speech. You see how entanglement surfaces at human scale. The conversation you decline to escalate at noon prevents a stranger's argument at dusk. The apology you made at 3:17 p.m. persuades a father to listen at 8:04. No mystical theatrics, only relational fidelity, moving along lines we rarely map. You do not strain to track it. You trust that benevolence, once introduced, finds work without supervision. There are nights when the city's pulse turns hectic, and you feel the collective chest tighten like a hand making a fist. You do not flinch from the surge. You let it pass through your diaphragm until the pressure forgets its script. You give the room what panic cannot manufacture: a longer exhale, a wider room behind the eyes, a vertical that refuses collapse. Then others borrow your tempo without needing your name. When two worlds within a world argue, the one built of hurry and the one woven of listening, you hold the conversation inside you until it remembers its choice. This is the subtle timeline bifurcation you steward, not a catastrophe, a preference. What prefers kindness chooses the quieter road. What prefers noise exhausts itself and stops recruiting your attention. You do not exile anyone. You stop subsidizing confusion. At home, you wipe a counter with devotion, as if cleaning a lens that others will see through. You return an email with a sentence shaped to hold the dignity of the person reading it. You water a plant and witness your own nervous system learn from the plant's pace. Care at small scales teaches the city how to remember itself. You honor disagreement without importing contempt. Contempt is dirty fuel. It burns bright and leaves ash that chokes futures. You let difference sit at your table and discover it is less frightening when fully met. When difference is not frightened, it becomes information rather than threat. You sometimes feel grief rise like tidewater in a basement no one visits. You do not pump it out with distractions. You open a door and let the moon have it. Grief, given moonlight, becomes intelligence. Intelligence, given work, becomes service. Your body remains your instrument of governance. Breath paced to compassion, chest warmth like a steady lamp, light collecting behind your eyes as if the night trusted you with its stars. You do not rush the city to awaken. You give it a stable seat to awaken in. In that stability, strangers remember a practice they never learned and begin to practice it anyway. It looks like kindness that refuses the microphone and still fills the room. You understand now that the mirror is not a flat sheet, but a living meadow. It reflects what you bring and grows more of it. Bring panic, and panic multiplies its seeds. Bring patience, and patience ripens into trust that can be harvested by those you will never meet. Legacy, at this scale, is the ordinary mood you leave behind. As doubt unhooks its claws, direction turns luminous. In the soft gravity of attention, the sequence resumes by itself. You feel it, before you can name it, a hush that thickens the ordinary until the ordinary admits it was always sacred. You do not dramatize the threshold, you recognize it. The room gains a pale rim like an eclipse halo at noon, and your breath discovers a slower path through your ribs, as if guided by a wiser cartographer. Behind your eyes, a mild brightness arranges itself into consent. This is not a cliff. This is a fork so subtle it could pass for routine if you were rushing. Because you are not rushing, you catch the hinge, the instant where your next thought will recruit a world. You place your attention there, steady as a hand on a newborn's back. Timeline bifurcation is not thunder shattering the sky. It is a river parting around a stone that finally remembers its role. One current is familiar, narrow, quick, costly. The other is quiet, wide, untheatrical, honest. You stand in the stone's position and let water learn you. You feel the observer loop trying to spin up its usual weather. Narrate, predict, brace. You do not take the bait. You choose sensation over story. The warm lamp inside your chest, the weight of your tongue resting on the floor of your mouth, the crown soft as if a window had cracked open into space. Sensation is a truer compass than speculation. Two futures make their proposals. The first offers speed and applause with a hidden tax called self-abandonment. The second offers alignment and quiet dividends paid as unregretted evenings. You examine your nervous system and notice which voice tightens your throat and which relaxes your spine. You choose the one your spine trusts. The quantum field is listening not for slogans but for signatures. Your signature is coherence measured across breath, thought, and action. When the three rhyme, the field reads a single instruction and obeys it politely. You let rhyme occur. Inhale match to honesty, exhale match to mercy, behavior match to both. You remember that choice is a public utility disguised as a private event. When you select the gentle road here at this email, this reply, this purchase, this pause, you lower the local cost of gentleness for others. Your vote is not abstract. It changes the price of kindness in the neighborhood. You cast it with your posture. The mind asks for guarantees. You give it geometry. You picture a destiny vector, an arrow arising from your chest, oriented by values rather than moods. You align the arrow by three questions you can answer without a committee. Is it true? Is it kind? Is it necessary? When the arrow stabilizes, hesitation dissolves without a struggle. You feel the inflection like a soft click in the deep joint of time. A phone buzzes and is allowed to be a bell without becoming a king. A sentence forms and is released half an octave lower than habit. A door waits and meets your hand without pretense. Nothing spectacular, yet everything different. This is the physics of a phase transition at human scale. The same molecules arranged more honestly. Ice to water, water to vapor, fear to information, urgency to clarity, resentment to boundary. The temperature is your courage. You raise it 1 degree by remaining present, and the lattice lets go of its stiffness. Somatics keep you trustworthy. Your breath, 4 counts in, 6 counts out, until the diaphragm remembers it is an instrument, not a fist. Your chest, a low hearth, fire whose warmth expands permissions in concentric circles. Your eyes, light resting behind them like dawn discovering it is welcome. You do not perform serenity. You allow anatomy to rehearse the future until the future recognizes its role. The world offers a final test, not as punishment but as calibration. An old invitation arrives wearing a new jacket. Quick victory, cheap certainty, a spotlight with poor hygiene. You greet it with the same stillness you offer a friend. You ask the vector its opinion. The arrow does not tremble. You bow to your own accuracy and decline with clean language that leaves no splinters. Because you choose like this, the higher timeline no longer feels hypothetical. It behaves like flooring underfoot, supportive, quiet, willing to hold weight. Events rearrange, not dramatically, but respectfully. An email arrives that saves 3 meetings. A delay prevents a fracture. A stranger's kindness lands exactly when your resolve could have leaked. You do not call it luck. You call it compatibility. Your decision propagates along invisible threads. Someone you will never meet chooses rest over rage because your message lacked contempt. A manager softens a deadline because your clarity modeled dignity without drama. A child hears a parent apologize sincerely for the first time because you normalized sincerity's tone in the room they share. Causality wears silk when it wishes to move without friction. The city inhales. You sense the field of remembrance thicken around the evening commute, like benevolent weather. Street lamps rim themselves with quiet purpose. In the train, a shoulder drops that would have risen. In a kitchen, a glass is set down gently instead of argued with. You have not controlled anything. You have cooperated with everything that prefers to heal. Uncertainty remains, but its teeth have been filed. You do not demand clairvoyance. You maintain coherence. Where coherence is kept, prophecy does not need to shout, it specifies. Specification feels like relief that repeats. You stand, feeling the spine as a tuning fork struck by kind sky. The bifurcation recedes as event and remains as orientation. From here forward, your default is a little wider, a little slower, a little truer, and because defaults scale, the future quietly alters its budget. You walk without hurry, carrying the soft afterglow of rightness that does not need witnesses. At your back, The path you did not choose folds itself into compost for others. At your feet, the path you did choose grows a surface friendly to bare souls. You thank both. Gratitude is the lubricant of thresholds. Where the mind loosens, the signal threads through effortlessly. You begin by making a small home for the signal. A chair near a window, a glass of water that remembers rain, a moment whose edges you do not crowd. You sit, as if returning a borrowed instrument to its rightful music. You do not summon anything. You become available. Your breath arranges the room. 4 counts arrive, 6 counts depart, and the diaphragm remembers how to glide instead of negotiate. Warmth fills the bowl of your chest, not as heat, but as an even lamp that refuses drama. Behind your eyes, a light takes its seat and waits for your consent to speak through ordinary sentences. Integration is not a performance. It is housekeeping. You clear a path for signal the way you clear a counter before cooking for someone you love. No ritual louder than kindness, nothing rarer than accuracy. You let the light codes you already carry touch the fabric of your day until fabric turns luminous without needing to glow. You begin with language. You retire the sentences that spend courage before action. I always. They never. It's just how it is. You adopt grammar that cooperates with generosity. Right now, it might be truer. Let's look again. Words stop dragging the future like a net and begin inviting it like a guest. You move to rhythm next. You refuse the calendar's superstition that fullness equals worth. You place white space between obligations like mortar between stones, and structure becomes shelter instead of theater. Emails inherit your pacing. Meetings remember they have lungs. Decisions stop sprinting and start walking in shoes that fit. Your body learns the choreography of coherence, jaw unlocked, throat cavernous, pelvis wide enough for gravity to be friend, not verdict. Hands open on purpose so they do not seek a reason to clutch. Feet red floors for consent rather than conquest. Because anatomy cooperates, psychology stops hoarding control. You calibrate attention like a lens. What is true receives high resolution. What is merely loud receives a soft focus that will not subsidize its volume. You attend to one thing at a time until one thing becomes enough. Enoughness ripens into peace faster than victory ever could. You invite your spaces to help. The desk is cleared not to impress minimalism, but to remove friction from devotion. A small bowl holds loose coins and, by example, your scattered impulses. A plant teaches your timetable biodiversity. You water when the soil asks, not when the clock performs authority. You establish a simple rite for thresholds. Before entering a room, you pause at its mouth, let breath touch the back of your heart, and remember your destiny vector, the arrow that answers to truth, kindness, and necessity. You do not enter to dominate, you enter to harmonize. Rooms read your purpose and choose not to argue. You practice relational hygiene. You apologize before shame can grow armor. You forgive before resentment can accrue interest. You ask for clarity without smuggling accusation inside the envelope. Conversation becomes an ecosystem where oxygen circulates instead of a market where attention is traded for noise. You notice the city respond through morphic resonance. A courtesy you offered in the morning reappears at dusk wearing another person's coat. A generosity you practiced once becomes easier for a stranger 2 trains away. The pattern is not yours, the pattern is ours, and you have chosen to be a reliable host. Reliability is a miracle with good manners. You steward energy like a quiet accountant. You reconcile your spend with your vow, and close the ledger when rumor asks for overtime. You rest before depletion sues for custody of your joy. Rest ceases to be a reward and becomes infrastructure. You let your nights become wise. Screens dim early. Darkness resumes its rightful office as teacher rather than alarm. A notebook waits by your bed to welcome what would otherwise haunt. Dreams arrive speaking the dialect of the field of remembrance, and you wake with instructions written in a hand you recognize but cannot counterfeit. You count small obediences as sacraments. Return the cart. Answer the text with the tone you would want to receive. Leave a room slightly kinder than you found it. Do not announce these. Let them accumulate until benevolence becomes so common it hides in plain relief. You stabilize your thresholds with a 3-breath liturgy. First breath, You remember who you are when no one is asking. Second breath, you remember what matters when everything is asking. Third breath, you align the two, and the day loses its appetite for confusion. Alignment travels farther than enthusiasm. You create a sanctuary for silence inside conversation. When others race, you do not chase the horizon. You invite the horizon to attend. You answer at the speed of truth, which is slower than anxiety and faster than denial. Responses that used to burn bridges now build them, one precise plank at a time. You let beauty assist. A bowl of oranges becomes a sermon on sufficiency. Music at a humane volume edits your pulse. A window cracked in winter proves that fresh air is not the enemy of warmth. You accept help from what does not speak because it speaks clearly. When the old observer loop tries to reboot, scan, brace, rehearse, you offer it work that belongs to it. Observe. Observe the texture of your breath at the collarbone. Observe the peace that arrives when you tell the truth without decoration. Observe the moment you almost leave yourself and choose to remain. You keep a promise with time. You do now what requires 5 minutes so that later does not steal 50. You attend to maintenance as devotion. The hinge oiled, the bill paid, the text returned before corrosion learns your name. Maintenance, practiced lovingly, prevents emergencies that would audition as destiny. You let gratitude be intelligent rather than compulsory. You do not thank the storm for flooding, you thank the roof for holding. You do not praise exhaustion for its drama. You praise the hour that refused to sell itself to spectacle. Praise teaches the field what to multiply. By evening, your day hums like a well-tuned room. Nothing extraordinary, everything faithful. You stand at the window of your own life and feel the soft unanimity of parts that prefer each other. Integration is not a finish line, it is a citizenship. You are learning how to belong to your own frequency without exiling anyone else from theirs. A smaller voice becomes undeniable, and you recognize it as your own. You enter the room where speech has no assignment, and your first task is to stop auditioning for sound. You let everything that is not necessary sit down. Chairs of habit scrape softly across the floor of your awareness, and then agree to be still. You breathe as if tasting the air for the first time today, and the air responds by remembering its sweetness. This is the chamber inside the stillness window, where time widens like a tide pool at low moon. You do not try to think. You allow thinking to cool until it becomes clear glass. Through that glass, the world does not shrink. It comes closer without crowding you. You feel a small lantern behind your eyes, not bright, simply honest, a domestic star that knows its job. Your chest warms as if a hand you trust had been placed there from the inside. Your diaphragm lowers its shoulders. Your jaw remembers it is not the vault of a guarded museum. The spine lengthens by polite degrees, and gravity turns from verdict to companionship. You listen for the faint machinery of panic and discover silence reaching in to unplug its cables. No tug of war, only consent. You let the noise be unemployed for a while. Without the payroll of your attention, it cannot afford to stay. The mind, surprised to be relieved of its performance schedule, sits quietly on the porch and watches clouds become themselves again. This is not absence. This is density without weight. The room gathers around your breath, as if your lungs were a hearth. When you inhale, the quantum field leans nearer to read your steadiness. When you exhale, the field inherits your preference for gentleness and edits its probabilities accordingly. Inside this quiet, you hear the soft arithmetic of coherence parts agreeing on a single story, because the story is kind. Heartbeat and thought stop negotiating unequal contracts. Emotion ceases lobbying for attention and begins offering information. Information, treated with dignity, becomes guidance. Guidance, treated slowly, becomes wisdom you can carry without spilling. You let names grow temporarily lighter. Roles loosen their belts. Parent, partner, leader, novice. Each title sets itself on a nearby table and continues existing without pinching you. You realize identity is a jacket best worn seasonally, while being is the climate that never needs tailoring. The silence begins to demonstrate its physics. In the absence of grasping, entanglement stops feeling like fate and starts feeling like friendship. Threads you share with others no longer pull at you. They hum beside you, tuned to the same pitch your chest is offering. Where there was tugging, there is resonance. Where there was story, there is relation uncluttered by rehearsal. Behind your eyelids, you notice stardust behaving like punctual rain. Not spectacle, but service. Each particle landing where doubt once tried to squat. Doubt receives chairs, water, a view, and realizes it does not need to shout to be heard. It agrees to speak in sentences instead of sirens. You sense the field of remembrance as a slow aurora moving through the marrow of the day. Not something added, something revealed when nothing is pushing. Memories you thought were errors show their secret curriculum. How you learn to listen, how you learn to stop deleting yourself, how you learn to choose the long road that ends here, where quiet tells the truer secrets. You thank the versions of you that survived on improvisation until devotion could arrive. Silence begins to curate your inventory. What you cannot carry without breaking, you set down. What you can carry cleanly, you keep. What belongs to others, you bless and return to the shelf of their choice. The shelves look grateful to be organized by kindness instead of urgency. Language visits without insisting. A phrase floats in, say less, mean more. Another, touch the hinge, not the door. You write them on the inside of your ribs as simple policy. Policy is mercy scaled. You ask nothing cosmic to happen and therefore make room for the cosmic to feel at ease. A single breath lasts longer than it should, then lands with a click you recognize as permission. The room seems rimmed with an eclipse halo shadow encircled by exact light, and you understand that darkness, when met fully, is simply depth. Depth without fear tastes like clean water. You let your nervous system graze rather than hunt. Attention moves slowly over textures. The soft flannel of your sleeve, the temperature of the glass, the way the hum in the wall is not hostile. Predators of thought lose interest when there is no chase. What remains is a meadow where meaning grazes undisturbed until it is ready to be milked for sentences later. Sometimes a worry knocks, rehearsing its emergency voice. You open the door and ask it to speak in measurements. How much? How soon? What helps? 3 numbers replace a fog of dread. Dread without fog becomes instruction, and instruction is your native weather. This is where morphic resonance pays dividends you did not know you had invested. Because you consent to quiet here, someone 3 rooms away discovers a pause they did not plan. A friend texts later and says, I don't know why, but today felt breathable. Let's see. You do not claim credit, you claim consistency, and consistency is fertile ground for anonymous blessings. In the hush, you practice the smallest courage, not adding. You refrain from the extra anecdote that would have scored points, the extra gesture that would have bought applause, the extra worry that would have raised false alarms. Subtraction reveals the architecture that overgrowth was stealing from view. Architecture loves sunlight. It prefers to tell the truth. At the edge of this quiet, the future stops shouting from a distance and steps into an understandable voice. It does not threaten, it converses. It speaks in verbs you can do now. Rest, return, repair, release, reach. Each verb feels like a key sliding into the precise lock your day has been carrying on a ring of misfit keys. You taste a sentence arriving without decoration. Keep the signal clear. You taste another. Let kindness outlast the circumstance. You hang them on the wall of your silence like promises that do not need witnesses. Witnesses come anyway when the door opens. You do not seek omens. You let ordinariness become an omen by refusing to rush past it. A kettle completes its song. You answer at once. The cup warms your hands warm the air around your face. The air tells your skin it is here to help. Help, when not dramatized, multiplies. When you finally rise, you do not leave the silence behind. You wear it. It becomes the lining of your attention, the fabric under your words, the pause that turns conversations into bridges instead of battlegrounds. Those near you do not know what changed. They only know there is more room for their own accuracy to breathe. This is how quiet evangelizes without a sermon. The horizon exhales. Nearness replaces distance. You begin now, not by reaching, but by arranging your yes into a shape the world can read. You place both feet flat, heels listening, toes honest. You let your spine remember sky and your belly remember trust. You are not preparing to escape, you are consenting to arrive. Inhale through the nose for 4, as if gathering clear water from a spring that never judges. Hold for 2, not as effort, but as welcome. Exhale for 6, letting the exhales sweep old static from the corners of your nerves. Repeat 3 times until the breath no longer feels like a visitor, but like the rightful owner of the room. Place your palm to the warm lamp of your sternum and give it a single responsibility. Keep time with the world that prefers kindness. Your other hand rests open on your thigh like a small shoreline waiting for tide. Behind your eyes, let a soft light take its seat. Do not command it to shine. Let it specify itself. You are not making light. You are removing the lid. Name the frequency with simple policy. I will tell the truth gently. I will move at coherence. I will choose the longer exhale. You do not audition the vow. You inhabit it, the way a bird inhabits air locally, thoroughly, without speeches. As soon as inhabiting begins, the room admits a new architecture. Edges grow polite. Distances lose their sharpness. The present fits. Invite the light codes you carry to read you back. Let them travel the distance from behind your eyes to the palm at your chest, like patient constellations redrawing themselves into a kinder story. Where they pause, place attention as a lantern not to interrogate, to befriend. Friendship at this depth is instruction. Now, picture your life as a set of small rooms you visit daily. The desk, the car, the kitchen, the conversation by the door. At the threshold of each, make the sign of an invisible practice. 1 breath to remember, 1 breath to soften, 1 breath to aim. Aim means orienting your destiny vector toward what is true, kind, and necessary, nothing more ornate. You do not push the arrow, you align the bow. Let your language follow. Speak half an octave lower than habit. Lower voices borrow earth's steadiness. Offer sentences that carry weight without carrying weapons. Where a barb tries to hitchhike, let silence finish the sentence. You are participating in a local phase transition, fear reorganizing into information, urgency into clarity, performance into presence. The thermometer is attention. You raise temperature by remaining. As the lattice loosens, choice stops feeling like surgery and starts feeling like breath, deciding when to leave. Leaving happens when leaving is right, not when panic demands spectacle. Give the quantum field a clean instruction by making your rhythms boring enough to be trusted. Drink the water, walk the block, touch the sunlight with uncovered eyes for 2 minutes of consent. Boredom at this scale is benevolence, learning to be durable. Durability is the quiet miracle others can spend without knowing who minted it. You mint it by repeating what works until it becomes character. Let your hands remember they are instrument. On the inhale, feel them subtly widen at the heel of the thumb. On the exhale, feel the fingers grow articulate without urgency. When you touch objects, let them keep their dignity after you leave the cup set down gently, the door closed without testimony. Objects remember how they were handled. The field of remembrance keeps such books. Invite entanglement to behave like friendship rather than fate. Say inwardly, may what loves truth in me coordinate with what loves truth in you. Not to control you, to harmonize us. Harmony outperforms persuasion because it spends less energy proving itself. If the old observer loop revs scanning for error, rehearsing outcomes, courting catastrophe, give it work appropriate to its gift. Observe without verdict. Notice 3 true details in the room, 3 in the body, 3 in the breath. 9 truths cancel 90 rumors. Rumor, unfunded, cannot afford to continue. When the tug of 2 futures visits the hurried one with trophies or the quiet one with sleep, read the data in your rib. Which breath feels like home? Choose home, even if applause moves elsewhere. Applause will return when it learns the price of entry is accuracy. Let your practice enter public space. Before you reply, place a silent hand against the inside of your sternum. Allow a 1-breath delay where resentment would usually leap. Reply from beneath the leap. Underneath is where bridges are built. You now open the small rite of honest permission. Say softly, once, with the mouth that belongs to a patient future, I allow coherence to become my default. Say again, I allow the higher outline to find me where I stand. Say a 3rd time, I keep the signal clear. Watch the room alter its budget. For 3 evenings, meet the window at the same hour and read the dusk for quiet instructions. A phrase may arrive, write it. A picture may land, draw its skeleton with 5 lines. An action may request your morning, place it on the calendar with a name that treats it as sacred work. Extend the activation to strangers you will never meet by investing in morphic resonance. Perform one courtesy you cannot be thanked for. Let that be the seed that lowers the cost of courtesy across a street you will not walk. This is how activation becomes culture. Culture is prophecy formatting itself as habit. If a tremor passes through your day, meet it with a longer exhale and the gently widening of the crown, as if a skylight had remembered it could open. Say inwardly, not today, to panic, today, to patience. Patience is faster than panic when measured over a lifetime. You are measuring over lifetimes, and the math is merciful. Now place the rite in voice. Whisper into the quiet, I remember. Then type, I remember the prophecy. Let the whisper pass through the bones. Let the words root into the public soil where habits grow. Memory is a communal resource when tended this way. To seal this hour's work, return your hands to resting and let gratitude choose one small object to thank for its service. Thank it silently, thoroughly, without poetry. Objects pass the thanks along in languages we do not chart. You will notice the dividends arriving as unremarkable ease. Under the lids of stillness, symbols align into language. You arrive at the closing door the way dawn arrives at glass, not to knock, but to be recognized. You place your breath like a seal upon the hour. 4 in, 6 out, the chest warming until its lamp steadies without asking for oil. You let your gaze grow kind to distance. You let distance become nearness that forgot its costume. This is the sealing act. You agree to continue, not as strain, as fidelity. You sign your name inside the field of remembrance by keeping the signal clear when no one is watching. You choose simplicity that carries weight, language that carries mercy, and movements that carry no hidden tax. You feel the pattern knit itself behind your sternum, a soft geometry clicking into place, as if a small constellation had found its rightful sky. You do not chase meaning, you offer a room it enjoys inhabiting. Because the room is ready, meaning returns with friends, ease, accuracy, relief that does not need proof. Around you, the ordinary begins to behave like sanctuary by preference. Now you place the seal in 3 gestures. First, the hand to the heart, not as drama, as measurement confirming that coherence still lives where you live. Second, the breath that outlasts hurry, instructing the day in your chosen tempo. Third, the glance that blesses without possession, letting others inherit steadiness without debt. You acknowledge that thresholds repeat. The world will ask you again to spend yourself for applause with poor hygiene. You answer with a practiced kindness that does not negotiate away your center. Because you keep this center, the higher timeline keeps you. If anxiety rattles the latch, you do not argue at the door. You become the house. Walls made of patience, windows made of listening, roof stitched from small, fulfilled vows. Inside such architecture, rumors wither from lack of oxygen. You let your body carry the gospel your mouth need not preach. Jaw unarmed, shoulders remembering sky, feet sympathetic to flaws. You walk as if silence were the fabric under all sound, and you are honoring the cloth. The city reads this walk and corrects its posture by increments too kind to trend. Kindness does not need headlines, it needs hosts. Now you return the vision to maintenance. You water what you can, mend what you broke, rest while rest is still able to be chosen instead of forced. You practice the small sovereignties that keep governments of the heart from corruption. A cup set down gently, a sentence spoken half an octave lower than habit, a choice made at the speed of truth. When the subtle pull of timeline bifurcation visits spectacle or service, you remember that service is simply accuracy aimed outward. You aim. The prophetic seal holds when action and breath rhyme. You keep them rhyming with a tension that refuses panic surcharge. At the window, dusk braids itself with your steadiness, and the room grows its eclipse. Halo again, shadow ringed by precise light. You feel the quiet confirm what it has silently promised all along. You are not forecasting, you are formatting. Format kept. Futures align themselves like books, shelved by genre and returned when finished. If a benediction rises, let it be simple enough to survive errands. Carry it folded in a pocket, crease marks like coordinates for ordinary miracles. Let it open itself whenever a door forgets it is door and pretends to be stone. You know what to do then. You breathe, You remain. You let light choose simpler words, and the way clears. What you sought was seeking you. Now it breathes with your breath.